All right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with one Matthew or Matt, which is the preference? Your fantasy tips, Matt, but in Twitter or in Slack, I think you're Matthew Belman. What's up with
I don't know. Most people call me Matt. For some reason, whenever I sign up for something, I'm just so used to writing my full name out. So most people call me Matt. I'm definitely not one of those oh, you have to call me Matthew or anything like that. I would say Matt.
It's funny. I had my best friend in college. He insisted on going by Michael instead of Mike. However, he was comfortable with his 50 other derogatory nicknames that
right.
we gave him, but he didn't want to be called Mike. So
I don't really know how that happens. I'm thinking about that. I have a cousin named Michael. We always call him Michael. Most Mikes I know are Mike. It's just funny how it works like that.
Yeah, it was one. He told us what I can't remember what. I mean, I should know. I was the best man in his wedding. I can't think off the top of my head what the reasoning was, but it was just no, it's Michael. All right, whatever.
That's funny.
But it's sort of like me. I was funny because I lucked out when I signed up to the fantasy sites because I'm like, oh, username. I don't have a username, so I signed up as EMac. Right, because that's what my family. My brother is Brian, so it's EMac, BMac. And my dad was John, so it's Johnny Mac, and mom was Suzanne, Susie. Right, it's just that those were the family nicknames, from the various extended members. It kind of was what it was. So it's always kind of funny. But at work, I'm always Eric. So
speaking of funny, I can't remember now, but I know you had a tweet that made me chuckle couple days ago. I think it was in response to Laffy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I was, if it was Thursday Night Football, I was up tweeting things to our friends, Dave Loughran and Awesome Yo, Mike Lawrence, the producer, who are Phillies fans, and Eric Lindquist and Neil Orfield, who are Minnesota fans. So I was having fun as a Seattle fan that's about to go 0-2, but hey, here we are. But we've got football on tap, or football. We do have football on tap coming up after us at 11 o'clock. You're going to get the college football live before lock with Ben Raza and Matt Gajewski. But we're going to talk MLB. 10-game slate on DraftKings. It is a 9-game slate on FanDuel and Yahoo. DraftKings is including the second game of the Coors Field doubleheader, which, of course, is the makeup game from Thursday that was rained out. The other two sites are foregoing it. DraftKings actually has that in one of their earlier slates too, or at least they do in their early tiers contest. So usually they end up skipping one of them. But I believe since this one was basically on the schedule as soon as it was postponed on Thursday, they knew what the times were going to be for Saturday. The other sites just punted on it for reasons. But we're going to jump in. Oh, speaking of sites, we are sponsored by Owner's Box. If you guys waited to sign up, didn't sign up last week, the 30 days, the full month of Stochastic Sims Max offer, it's now 1 week, but you can still sign up at Owner's Box. Coming through the link below us here, they will give you a deposit match up to $500. That comes out as a basically it's a 4% drip bonus, but you should be able to, you got to play through $500 25 times, right? And everybody's like, oh, it takes forever. And it's like, no, it's reduced rate. It's 4%, right? This stuff adds up. I'm still playing through on Yahoo. I'm decreasing my volume on DraftKings over on Yahoo because I signed up there when they created their site 11 years ago or whatever it was. And I had $4,000 of that drip money coming through. So now I'm playing over there because I don't have those bonuses on any other sites. So I'm like, well, might as well clear this one out. And if you're close to being a break-even player, that 4% can get you right up to the edge. It doesn't seem like much, but it stops you from having to redeposit so frequently if you're utilizing your skills and our tools. That's the whole goal, not having to redeposit. But check that out. That is Owner's Box. We saw utilizing the Sims. We do have Sims for them. I've noticed some of the optimizer sites do not handle their Superflex option, which we do in our Stochastic Sims. I believe Josh Engelman, Steve Buzzard, CFO, and then Jordan Frank, one of the other founders who is the chief head of marketing. They all finished top 10 over there in Owner's Box. Just saying, they're using our tools. They use that $500 deposit bonus, and they're off and running. So check it out. Let's get into the baseballs. There's a little weather in the Midwest. which means Chicago, Kansas City, and St. Louis. The latter two have a little more risk than the former. You'll have to check before luck because it's the Midwest. We're heading into the fall, and I don't know what the coverage is going to be because I'm not a meteorologist, but those are the key things to remember as we go in. But let's head on over to our slate. We have our game starting at 7:05. First one, Tampa Bay Rays at the Baltimore Orioles. Two teams kind of going in opposite directions here, but playoff hope's still on the line for both. What do you got in this matchup, Matt?
So in this matchup, you got two good pitchers. One, really, really good pitcher in Tyler Glasnow, and then another up and coming, potential ace in Grayson Rodriguez. I don't think there's really a lot to like from the offenses here. This slate is similar to last night in that we have Coors, San Francisco in Coors. They're too cheap, but it's different in that there's a lot of shitty pitchers tonight. Like a lot of other offenses are in really good spots just because they're facing bad pitching. Didn't have like a ton of that last night. So it does present like a nice little twist in this slate. That said, like I'm much more interested in the pitching in this game. I think Glasnow looks like from a points per dollar perspective, probably slightly worse than Burns and Lopez because he's facing Baltimore. Those guys are facing Washington and the White Sox respectively. He's better than those guys though. Like he's a better strikeout pitcher. I just think he's a better pitcher overall. So if you want to pivot to him, I don't think that's a problem at all. And then Grayson Rodriguez isn't as good as those guys, but he's, $3K cheaper. So he looks like the clear mid-range guy you go to. It's not a great spot against Tampa, but they strike out. So I think both pitchers in this game are wildly in play. Rodriguez coming in as the second highest owned guy on the slate. Glasnow like fourth. So I think they both make sense. I like them both quite a bit here.
Yep, I wrote up the article today, and I went with Glasnow as my second wild card option. So we'll talk about Tyler Anderson. He's only a two pitcher site play. It's a pricing play. He's 26 on Yahoo. He's 6,900 on DK. You don't want to play him on FanDuel. He's only has one quality start. He's only gone into the sixth inning once in his last.
That was his last start.
That was his last start. He had 8 innings, and he rarely goes over 80 pitches. Okay, now preview, we're not going to worry about him, but Glasnow, perfect pivot because he's a very similar price point. We're going to talk about Pablo Lopez. We're going to talk about Corbin Burns. Glasnow, very similar price point, which is important because that's an easy swap out of an otherwise popular / chalky type lineup. The good thing about Glasnow, he has a 33.5% striker rate over the last since the start of last season. That's where all his fantasy upside comes from. It's the strikeouts. He has the slightly tougher matchup than the other two. A little bit better strikeouts, at least this season, than the other two. So he's a perfect swap for those guys. But that's the biggest thing I like about this game. As you mentioned, Rodriguez, solid pitcher, hard to target either of these offenses, but they can both bring the lumber. All righty, let's.
I think slightly more if the ownership wasn't there. Like he's getting less love than Burns and Lopez, but it's not like it's not like, oh, I can go to Coors and play Glasnow and be under-owned. You know what I mean? Like he's a little bit less owned, but he should be a little bit less owned. So I think like all three of those guys make sense in their own right.
I have a feeling we're going to see a little bit what we saw yesterday as the baseball content comes out. And yesterday, literally everybody was on Canning. And I'm blanking on the Tigers pitcher, Skubal. And it was one of those where their popularity just kept ticking up throughout the day from when I first did my article, and then that first one was released right around the time I was publishing. I was like, oh boy, they're already high. They're gonna keep creeping up. So remember, things move. There's the DFS echo chamber, etc. All we need is just one or two little tricky things to break our way, and suddenly, Glasnow drops by 10% in ownership, which ends up being like 30%. You got to think of, there's 10% in this, but the overall is a 30% proportionally. Fun.
I don't disagree with
percentages on percentages, Matt. I was told there would be no math today.
I don't think that happens here, but I certainly don't disagree with that line of thinking. You know what I mean? Like whether I think that happens or not here is irrelevant. You think it happens, and it makes sense given our tools. So it's all that.
And then you watch for it, and if it's there, boom, you grab it. If it's not,
Yeah.
all right, we got to find some other differentiation. Right? That's kind of the way it goes. Let's move on to our next game here. Houston in Kansas City. Again, light rain potentially here. No, that's not going to cause a postponement. I don't think it's going to impact the game by much. We're really not going to go to these pitchers. Here's why. Cole Reagan's looking real good, but Houston, over the last 4 years, has been one of the best teams against lefties. It's just not even worth it at this point, especially with 20 or 22 teams in the player pool. On the other side, you have JP France. Not enough strikeouts to make him very interesting. A little bit more. He's a rookie, but so we don't know if it's reverse splits yet by any stretch. A little bit more power to same-handed hitters, but he is not impervious to lefties. I'm okay with the offenses in these. I am more intrigued by one-offs, particularly MJ Melendez. And on, make sure I'm on DK. DK, he's just 3,300. And he's outfield eligible. That's a nice one-off. I also like him for a home run today. If you read the Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article, the wager of the day is him to hit a home run. Any thoughts on these pitchers? And wow, Reagans is finally putting it all together as his prospect pedigree didn't quite play out when he was with Texas.
Based on that alone, I don't think he's like the craziest play at 8,500, but it's not for me against this Houston offense, as you mentioned. I'm much more interested in that offense against Reagan's here. He's been really good, but Houston is a different beast. They are extremely well leveraged in our tools. So I think Houston looks good here. We've seen that a bunch recently, but today it stands out even more. They've got the third highest top stack. They're the third highest in their top stack pool, and they're fifth from the bottom in terms of ownership. So,
well, look at those DK prices. They're more expensive than anybody in Coors Field. 62 for Altuve, 61 for Alvarez, 58 for Tucker, 55 for Alex Bregman, who suddenly forgot how to hit lefties over the last 2 years, but still, nonetheless, is a good option. It's just interesting. There's a couple teams that were priced like this today, and you're just like, what's going on? FanDuel, everybody's buy one, get one free. But Yahoo, the wild one on Yahoo was Royce Lewis. $24. I think 26 is where they cap Ohtani, Trout, etc. He's at 24. So dynamic pricing on those two sides kind of have some of these teams out of play.
True.
But that's where we're getting the good leverage on, especially on DraftKings, and we need it tonight.
Right. You're right. It's much easier to roster San Francisco and a couple Minnesota also. Both those teams are very cheap. But you have these three teams kind of in between them. Houston, Philly, and Chicago. All three of them are expensive. They're all not going to get a lot of love because they're really expensive, and there's other teams in good spots that aren't. But just for that reason alone, those three teams are interesting, with Houston being my favorite one just because our tools say they're the best and they're getting the least amount of ownership. So it's a thing where it's really hard to get them. I haven't built lineups or anything yet. Not sure I would land there, but they're appealing if nothing else.
Absolutely. Anything else from this one?
Not for me.
All right. Hey, everybody. I just want to make sure you remember when I told you to sign up, leave a 5-star review at the old Stochastic podcast. Yeah, you guys forgot, didn't you? Well, don't forget some of these other things. We talked about Owner's Box. You could have had a month of Stochastic Maximum Sims package. Now you get a week. The other one that's still out there for you, Caesars. Go over there, create your account, use the link here at the bottom of our YouTube description. Slide on over there into Caesars. Make one $50 bet if you come in on our link. They will immediately give you a $50 free bet. And then each of the next 4 Mondays, they're going to give you another $50 bet. So that's 5 $50 free bets for your one $50 bet. Guys, there's a money-making opportunity here, even if you're picking favorites. If you do that consistency, you're going to walk away with more than you started with. Definitely a good way to go. But check that out. That is Caesar Sportsbook. Reminder, in most states, the legal age for gambling is 21 or older. And if you or anybody you know has a gambling issue, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Cincinnati Reds in New York taking on the Mets. Tyler Miguel, he's going to be an opener, right? Is he? I didn't go pull his numbers, but I
don't think so. No, you're thinking about
confused.
Trevor McGill. Yeah,
I get him and his brother confused.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like, oh, which one is the one that's an adequate pitcher and which one is the reliever? Because I'm not playing either one of them, but it's more how long is this pitch type or pitcher type going to be in the game? That's more I'm interested in for it. On the other side, you've got Andrew Abbott. Abbott, a wild card here. Tough ask going against the Metropolitans. They got a lot of good righties here. Another one where I'm not really enthralled by either pitcher. I could be convinced into the lefties for the Reds and then the righties for the Mets. Are either of these teams making your short list as you're looking to build your 2 or 3 lineups tonight?
No, I will say like Abbott doesn't look great to me just on like a points per dollar basis. He's probably a little bit too expensive, but he's a guy where like if you're playing all chalk everywhere else, he's not going to get ownership. So, like, I could see playing him just because of that. It's baseball. You saw it last night. You talked about how Skubal and Canning were both really popular. Because of that, Giolito ended up being pretty low owned, and he was by far the best guy. So, you're not saying that Abbott's going to be that today, but, things happen. Not interested in McGill here, even though Cincinnati does strike out like a good amount. I think they're much worse against left-handed pitching. His price tag, I guess, is the only thing that stands out a bit. If you want to play a team like Houston, you're going to need some cheap pitching. I'd rather play him, I think, than Tyler Anderson personally, especially given their ownerships. He's a little bit cheaper. We'll get to Anderson. I don't think it's like that much different of a play. Since power, they're young kids. When they hit the ball hard and far, but they also strike out a lot. McGill and the Cincinnati side both look similar to me here. Like neither one of them stands out as a top pitcher or a top stat, but I wouldn't argue with anyone who was like, I'm playing McGill or I'm playing Cincinnati here, if that makes sense.
Did you notice where recent debutante and future Hall of Famer Elly De La Cruz is in the batting order these days?
He's out against lefties, 8th against righties a lot now. I read a good article about that. Like, I think it was, I can't even remember who it was from, but yeah, he's.
Oh, I'm sure it was Greg Ehrenberg was the source.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that was just kind of an intriguing development. They got Jonathan India back from injury, Joey Votto as well. So they kind of have a few more of their veterans in there. TJ Friedel, I should know him. He's on my dynasty team, where I'm trying to beat Mr. T. McBee this season. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But he's been back into the heart of the order. It looked like he was going to be the odd man out at one point here. But
what they're doing is, we see this like with San Francisco pinch hitting. Cincinnati has so many outfielders and just hitters on their bench. You see it like last night when Peterson got pulled, they ran like 4 straight pinch hitters in a row. And they'll do a similar here if a lefty gets put in.
Yep, most definitely here. Let's continue along because we do have that college football live before lock show coming up at 11 a.m. Our next up here, we have the Minnesota Twins and the Chicago White Sox. Pablo Lopez, we sort of spoiled the surprise there, but he's going to be one of our recommended pitchers today. This season, he has essentially career highs across the board with a 3.43 ERA, a 1.14 whip, 10.7 strikeouts per 9, and 19 quality starts. By far the most of his career, 3rd most in the league this year. So he has been phenomenal since switching teams over there to the Twins. On the other side, or backing him, you've got the Twins going against Touki Toussaint, who is a batting practice pitcher, Matt. His last 35.2 innings, 31 runs, 28 walks, so almost a run and a walk per inning, 42 strikeouts, but that's not going to help. What do you got for us in this game? Is there anything from the White Sox you'd like to mention?
Nah. The White Sox from both sides look like two of the worst. Toussaint, very hard to make an argument for. The White Sox bats look even worse. Toussaint had been decent at limiting power. That looks like it's kind of not there anymore. Minnesota looks really good here. It's similar to last night. They're in a great spot. They're free, essentially. The ownership is way too high, though. They're basically the only team, San Francisco included, where Well, yeah, I guess you could put San Francisco with them, actually. That, like, you have to worry about ownership. I know we have San Francisco more, with a higher leverage than Minnesota, so I like them more in tournaments, but you still need to worry about ownership there. But with Minnesota, like, you can get to any other team on the slate and be different. Minnesota's not for me here. I know they went off last night. They had a good game. Lewis at the Grand Slam. He's been really good.
But what was wrong with last night's game? There were 2 extra base hits. That's
all they had?
And a double. That was it. I stacked them, and it didn't do a single bleeping thing for me because I didn't have Lewis on my Yahoo lineup. Yeah.
That stinks.
I had Kepler. I had Correa. They all scored. They had some.
They all probably had around 10.
Yeah, it was single digits across the board, basically, on Yahoo scoring. So
wouldn't be surprised if you see a similar output here, but if you're consistently getting guys on base, that's all you can ask for, right? Like, home runs will happen. Sometimes they'll hit more than others. I don't think Toussaint is like the biggest garbage can in the world, but Minnesota's free. So I understand why they're getting so much ownership. If I personally were going to play a team getting this much love, though, it would be San Francisco. Our tools have them double in top stack percentage, and they're getting similar ownership. So Minnesota looks very overowned here. But can't fault anyone who wants to play these guys as like a mini stack or one-offs just because they fit really well.
Yeah, and I do think Toussaint is hot garbage. He was on that aforementioned dynasty team that I had. He is no longer on that dynasty team. I outright released him and I'm eating the salary because it was just so bad this year. What I wanted to point out on that is people are like, oh, should have stacked the Twins. It's like, hey, I wrote them up. I'm not taking a victory lap for 10 runs. There were 2 extra base hits. That's not a stack, right? That's just not going to get you there when they're just.
The only thing I'll say is, like, it's slate dependent. They probably didn't win you anything last night, but they were a hell of a lot better than San Francisco.
Yes, that is true. And again, I didn't have Royce Lewis, and I did on my FanDuel lineups, but I didn't on that one Yahoo one. So you're like, no, I took the better hitters. Tell me what do you think this group of players has in common? Bill Buckner, Rod Carew, Dom DiMaggio, Carlton Fisk, Honus Wagner, Larry Doby, Davey Johnson, and Royce Lewis.
It's got to be the Grand Slams. Five
career Grand Slams. Yeah. What is the difference? Those guys all had between 100 and 300 more career home runs for their 5 Grand Slams. Royce Lewis has 16 career home runs, 5 of which are Grand Slams. That was a fun list looking at it. So you're like, oh my God, there's some names on here. So Grand Slams can be rather fickle. For anybody wondering, I forget the exact number, but I think it was 28. Alex Rodriguez, most career Grand Slams. I think his number was somewhere between 25 and 28. The next person I think was around 24. I don't remember who it was. And then people were a couple in the low 20s, and then everybody else was below that. So it was just I had no idea who it was going to be. I mean, makes sense that it's Rodriguez, but when you see names like Buckner and Carew and those guys, you're like, well, they weren't really power hitters per se, but Carlton Fisk was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of luck to get those. Anything else from this matchup?
Not really, but looking at Minnesota, and we'll talk about San Francisco soon, it makes sense why teams like Houston aren't getting any love. Mm-hmm. They're facing a better pitcher than Minnesota is, and they're much more expensive. So I love that, like, in tournaments in baseball, because it's like you're getting Houston at really low ownership, but you got to avoid Minnesota going off, which is no easy task against Toussaint here at their prices.
On to our next game. You've got the Washington Nationals in Milwaukee taking on the Brewers. Corbin Burns on the bump for the Brewers. He's going to be the top pitcher of the night. No real surprise there. The one thing we do want to point out in this matchup is that the Nationals over the last 30 days, while they are scoring just 3.7 runs per game and have a 130 ISO, they have a low 17.3% strikeout rate. They don't even have a lot of strikeout hitters in their lineup. So sometimes you'll find, we'll talk about another team here in just a minute. I think I've still got one more in here, but basically, like, a lot of times you'll write up pitchers and they're really good strikeout pitchers, and you look at they're like, oh my God, I'm going against a team that has a 19.6% strikeout rate, and then they've got 3 or 4 guys that are 25% or higher. You're like, okay, he's got to strike those guys out, but the pitcher has a chance as opposed to everybody at the low rate. The Nationals really don't have a lot of people that strike out at a high rate, but they don't have a lot of power either, right? Contact hitters. So for Burns, over his last 13 starts, he's allowed more than 2 runs only 3 times. I'm going to say that again. 3 of his last 13 starts has he allowed more than 2 runs. That's all you need to know. His strikeouts are down on the season, 9.1 per 9. Over this stretch, they're up to 9.8. So that's pulling up that average. His career average is 11.0 per 9. But remember, he was a reliever for a bit at the beginning of his career. So that is helping his strikeouts. So this is, I went back and forth between him and Burns as my favorite pitcher. Wasn't really sure who I would land on, but I'll probably land. I'm sorry, Burns and Lopez as my 2 favorite pitchers. I don't know which one I like better. Do you have one you like better between those 2?
I think I like Lopez slightly more for a couple reasons. One, I like the matchup more. You talked about Washington. They're not great, but they don't strike out. They don't even have guys that strike out like with a high rate in their lineup. They're basically the same price. Lopez is $200 more expensive, and he's getting like 7% less ownership. So I could see that like flattening out. Based on like our tools right now, though, I do think that I have Burns as my favorite, then Glasnow, I have Lopez as my favorite, then Burns, then Glasnow. Just the ownership, the matchups, all that. Like the Glasnow versus Burns is really the interesting one. I think Lopez is the clear number 1 guy.
Okay.
Glasnow is a better strikeout pitcher than Burns. They're comparable in terms of like how good they are just in general. You like the matchup better for Burns, like in terms of how you feel comfortable wise, but I think there's more strikeouts with Glasnow. That's the interesting one. I think personally Lopez is the top guy.
Okay. That no real argument there. There will be those are probably going to be my cash game pitchers on DK tonight. I'll have to see how things shake out. We do have Coors Field on that slate or in that player pool. So that's where I may have to go to a lower person like Anderson, but I'd rather go with the 2 better pitchers.
Grayson Rodriguez too. Like
that's a good point. That's actually a good point per dollar. He'll get there.
Yeah. And again, he's similar to Glasnow. It's not a great matchup. Tampa has power, but they'll strike out. So for me, if I were building one lineup like right now, I think I would use Lopez Rodriguez.
Yeah, because let's see, Rodriguez, 7,800. That's 3,000 less than Glasnow, 2,500 less than Burns. Yeah, you're right. That would be the way to go for those. Flipping the script here because it's the Nationals and they have bad pitching. Did you see the Steven Strasburg retirement celebration was canceled because they're arguing about the contract, finalizing the contract as he retires?
Such a bad.
Go Nats! Go Nats! We get rid of Dan Schneider, and you still got the idiot owners in Washington. But Trevor Williams, we thought Touki Toussaint was bad. Trevor Williams says, "Hold my beer." He has in his last 6 starts has allowed 3 or more, so 3, 3, and 4 home runs. So 3 times in his last 6 starts, he has allowed 3 or more home runs. Yikes. That's nothing new. In his 28 starts on the season, 9 of them have been multi-home run efforts. That's almost 1 in 3 have been multi-home run games. That is just wild. Over his last 30.1 innings, that's those 6 games I was talking about, an 8 ERA, a 7.91 FIP. He has, folks, not been unlucky, as it turns out. He has a 313 batting average against. He turns everybody into an all-star. Ladies and gentlemen, don't play Rowdy Tellez. How many extra base hits do you think Rowdy Tellez has in his last 101 plate appearances?
I'm not sure. I know he was out a while too.
But I've counted 101 plate appearances.
Yeah, so I don't know.
He has 1 home run.
Wow.
And 4 doubles. For the season, he projects to 24 extra base hits at that pace. His slash line right now, 169, 238, 247. Don't play him. There's too many other good first basemen today. Aside from that, well, on his own team, you were going to end up playing Carlos Santana anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But Willy Adames, Christian Yelich are the guys you really want to look at. William Contreras at catcher, South really rookie cleanup hitter. Those are your other guys. Sorry, I guess I analyzed that one for you. I dug deep this morning. I had extra coffee, I guess, because I was looking at some weird things.
I want to add a little bit about Milwaukee here because normally I'd look at the tools and like Milwaukee's getting too much love, 5% chance to be in the top stack, 9% ownership. I like them here. And I don't really understand, and this is what I want to ask you, why a team why Minnesota is considerably higher in the top stack tool. I don't think Trevor Williams he's in the same tier as Tuki Toussaint, if nothing else. I actually think he's slightly worse. Minnesota is probably a little bit better than Milwaukee, but not enough. Like on a lot of slates, Milwaukee would be getting too much ownership for me here. But with Minnesota and San Francisco eating so much of that, I think that they're actually a really good place to go.
So here's the interesting thing with Milwaukee, because I thought the same thing. And I said, okay. And I was running 30-day splits just out of curiosity because, we've got the roster's expanded by 2, people are hurt, blah, blah, blah. So now I just kind of look more at the 30-day sample size. I usually don't start doing that until this time of the year, typically, because it's usually you can bounce that off the full season and tell if there's any wild anomalies. But what I saw was, oh my God, over the last 30 days, the Milwaukee has a 138 ISO. That's ahead of only the Nationals, who have like 129 or something like that. However, they have the 8th most runs per game during this 30-day stretch at 5.3. So they're scoring. It's just not via home runs. They're getting extra base hit. Right, their doubles are in line with the league leaders during this stretch. Their home runs are less than half of what the league leaders are in this stretch, but their runs are getting there. So I think, knowing how things kind of work in projections and factoring in recent extra base hit, I don't know our exact mix or anything, but you look at full season, you look at career, you weight recent stuff more, right? That's how you make projections, right? So my guess is they're sliding a little bit because of that. Because when you look at their lineup, over the last 30 days, like Adames has been pretty good, and kind of Yelich, and the rest. And I don't like the 30-day sample size for individual hitters, even though they'll have close to 100 at bats in that. It's just it tends to be a little bit of noise, especially if you put a handedness split on it. But it's not good.
That's fair, and I don't disagree with that. And I will, I said they're better than Milwaukee. They've got more power in their lineup for sure. I will say though, one thing I do like about Milwaukee here, especially if you're small stacking them, they fill premium positions. You talked about Adames. Contreras is right up there with the top hitting catchers on the board. So, maybe you don't full stack Milwaukee, but I do think Contreras is one of the best catcher plays on the slate.
Yeah. And those are pretty good call-outs. I see Humboldt says Kellis was in his lineup he played last night. Needless to say, he lost. Hey, I was playing him for a little bit on Yahoo because he was like 7 when he came back, to your point, when he came back from that injury. And he was like $7 or $8, right? Which is $7 is their batter minimum. I'm like, oh, this is great. You got lefty, opposite-handed power, I'm going to take this. And then he wasn't doing shit. So I went and looked at it. And I'm like, when was the last time this guy had an extra base hit? This isn't good. This is actually bad because usually he's like he's the Matt Vogelbach, except he can they don't pinch hit him every time a lefty is on the mound, right? He won't start the game, but they usually don't take him out. But it's just like, God, he is not good right now. So, all righty, we got about 20 minutes to go, so let's keep chugging along here. Reminder, the Stochastic Avatar promotion. Go to stochastic.com/avatar, download the Stochastic Avatar, upload that to your DFS site of choice, finish top 3 in any contest with at least 5,000 participants. That's first, second, or third. That's not a 10-way tie for first, a 200-way tie for first. It can be a 3-way tie for first, but you got to finish top 3. Okay. Get 30 days of Stochastic Premium. All you got to do is tweet your screenshot with the Stochastic Avatar visible to Stochastic HOF over there on Twitter. Some people like to call it X. That's confusing to me. But so you can do that on Twitter. You can still type in twitter.com and get there. So we're going to call it twitter.com still. But you'll get 30 days of Stochastic Premium. If you don't have Twitter, you can always send that screenshot with the Stochastic Avatar to the support@stochastic.com. We're going to put you in the Hall of Fame segment because, hey, marketing, but we're also going to get you 30 days of Stochastic premium. All right, Phillies at Cardinals, 73 degrees today, 65% humidity, light breeze out to right field. 6 weeks ago, it would have been 93. Feels like 97 for this game, and we'd be talking about home run weather. We're back to Busch Stadium essentially being a neutral-ish park with the cooler temperatures here. Ranger Suarez on the mound, fair amount of ground balls. Michaelis on the mound just seems to absorb 3 to 4 runs every start. I don't see stacking upside in this one, but the weather would have got me there. However, these teams are getting close to a 10 implied run total for this game. What is your read on this one?
Philly looks really similar to Houston to me. I think Houston's better than Philly, obviously. But I also think Reagan's is probably better he's definitely better than Nicholas at this point. So those two teams look similar. They're both very expensive. I think that the bottom half of Houston's lineup is probably more competent than Philly's. That said, the top half of Philly's lineup, especially with how good Trey Turner's been for the last month or so, is still really good. So they look like a great contrarian stack, like spend up to be contrarian. Going to be really hard to prioritize them without I like Grayson Rodriguez a lot, but they're aren't really cheaper guys I love, and I don't really think I want to not play at least one of the top 3 guys, right? So it's hard to stack Philly there. They look like Houston. St. Louis, I do prefer them against lefties. Suarez is pretty good. I would never argue with anyone who wanted to play like Arenado against a lefty. Goldie, even though he hasn't been great against left-handers this year. There's just other spots that look better to me on this slate. I look at St. Louis, and then I look at a team like Detroit. I know that you have some interest in Anderson. I don't. And, I would just play a team like Detroit over St. Louis. Philly's in that next tier above, but they're really expensive. So if you can find a way to prioritize Philly, do your thing. Probably better off as one-offs, though, just given the context of the slate.
All right. I had a little religious experience here. I got a message from God. Well, technically, it's a message from News God. And he says they must have Twitter and post to @stochastic_COM for the free month of Hall of Fame or Stochastic HOF. I'm dropping the link to the rules in chat. As always, El Negro Loco knows everything. News God. My apologies. It's early in the morning, and I'm now drinking water instead of coffee. Not on my A game. Anything else from this game? We got another 4 to go.
No, let's get it.
All right. This is Coors Field. It's only on the DraftKings site, so this will be all DraftKings all the time. Back end of a doubleheader, so no implied run total here. We've got Ross Stripling and Kyle Freeland on the mound, so just assume it's going to be 10.5 for starters. What do you want to do here? We've got a righty and we got a lefty.
You think 10.5 run total?
For starters. Maybe it'll be higher.
Oh, okay.
Could be 11.5.
12.5.
12.5.
Yeah.
All the relievers get used in the early game. It could be higher.
That's true. That's true. It's just hard to say right now. We don't know. Good. You are right. It's like the Happy Gilmore. You're right. I'm wrong. You're handsome. I'm ugly.
Wait, tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah, right? There isn't that much to say on this game, to be honest. It's always hard to talk about the second half of doubleheader games because, like you just said, we don't know what's going to happen in the first game. It could go 20 innings and they use all their pitchers. We just don't know. Most likely that doesn't happen and we just get a normal game. San Fran looks great. Freeland is not good. You have to worry more about the pinch hitters, especially when they have a lefty on the hill. But if you expect them to destroy Freeland, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. They're coming in with leverage, given our top stack tool, 20% chance to be in the top stack, 17% ownership. And I will say, last night, the guys at the top of the lineup were very heavily owned. The bottom guys weren't. So if I were playing San Fran, I'd probably think about getting to the bottom guys a little bit, at least mixing them in there. But they look like the top stack on the board. This is a normal, just pretty good team in Coors. It's not Atlanta like we've seen recently or Toronto where they've got so much power, it's almost impossible to get away from them. But they're still a competent offense, and they look like the best spot on the slate to go to projection-wise.
Yeah, the other thing to remember, I mean, even though we don't know who's going to be used in the first game, but this is good information for the first game. The Rockies have 2 lefties in their bullpen. So odds are one of them is not coming in after Freeland. That means one of their countless righties will, at San Francisco, will adjust for that. They'll look at putting in Peterson, Yastrzemski, whomever, right? So that's where we say the pinch hit risk. You got to understand the mix. If it was a righty tonight, let's say everybody was rested in the bullpen, and it was a righty on the mound, you'd have to think, well, is Colorado really going to screw around and put a lefty in intentionally to knock a bunch of these guys out when they're just playing out the string on the season? Maybe not, right? Doesn't mean the managers have given up on the year, but it's just one of those where, who's the least experienced pitcher that we have that we need to get some innings to? Oh, it's a righty. Hey, kid, take the ball. You're up, right? So it's one of those where the strategery may not be as much. Whereas if they were against the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mariners, somebody ready for the playoffs, they would be bringing in a reliever to take out some of those pitchers or some of those hitters and make them burn through more of the bench. So just food for thought on that one. All right, back to the Cubs in Arizona, or I guess starting with the Cubs in Arizona. The final 3 games that we're going to talk about are going to be across all 3 sites on their main slates, so you guys will want to check that out. We talked about what haven't we talked about? We talked about owner's box, $500 deposit match coming through our link at week of stochastic maximum Simmons package. Caesars coming through our link, make a $50 wager, get 5 $50 free bet credits. You get 1 immediately and then 1 each of the next 4 Mondays. We talked about the Avatar promotion. We talked about the podcast a little bit, but what I didn't talk about is if you subscribe to the Stochastic podcast feed, you can get it on Spreaker and Google Play and Podbean and anything you can think of that has podcasts. We're out there. We are doing podcast only content now. So Greg and Lofty are doing a couple episodes each week. One of the things they're doing is afternoon slate NFL content, specifically for the afternoon slate, talking about how it's going to work with our tools, etc. That's a fun slate to look at, because for the first couple of weeks, we do have more than those lonely 3 games that end up being the afternoon slate with all the primetime games and teams on bye. We usually are going to have 4 or 5 afternoon slate games for the first couple of weeks here. So that's fun to listen to. And then they have a couple other things that they're doing on the podcast only. So that's free, but those shows are only coming out on the podcast feed. So it's a little boost for you guys. Into the Cubs here, you've got Kyle Hendricks on the mound. I never know what to do with him. Zach Davies, we like to go against him, but sometimes he has moments where he allows runs, but not power, which destroys our stacks, much like we saw the Minnesota stack destroyed last night. We're leaning offenses in this one. Let me double check and see if the roof is open or closed, but any nice thing to say about these pitchers?
Not really. I mean, I'm with you. I don't really know what to do with Hendricks basically every time he's on the slate. Davies is like a lesser version of Hendricks. I think it's about offenses in this game. It's tough to get to either offense here. Like, they're both expensive. And for what, like, Chicago is in the same pricing tier as Houston and Philly. I'd rather get to Houston and Philly. They're getting a little bit more ownership than Philly. Like, they fit in that group, though. If you like the Cubs the best there, go for it. I mean, they've got power. They run. Davies is not a guy I'm afraid to pick on at all. He's not the worst pitcher on this slate, but that just is because there's other garbage cans going. Like, he's a guy that you'll see get continuously picked on for a reason, and I don't hate it here. Arizona not getting nearly as much love. They're I got you. They're way down in our top stack tool. So I think my interest would be less in Arizona. Actually, they're getting like the same amount of ownership, which is pretty interesting. Arizona's cheaper. I guess that's probably the reason why. Had a nice night last night. There isn't that much that stands out for me from this game. You want the offenses more than the pitching. Wouldn't be a shocker to me if either of these offenses like won the slate. They just don't look better than other, spots that are similar.
All right, I'm back. Poor little dog, not feeling well. She had a little upset tummy. We got to go out 3 times last night, though. It was a lot of fun. In the middle of the night with her standing on these things.
I know all about that.
Hi, I'm over here. All right. So the roof will be closed for all the games in this Cubs series. So I just wanted to confirm that because that does allow the humidor to do a little bit more of its work and keep the offenses down by about half to 3/4 of a run. So always good to understand that one. Let's continue on. We got about 7 minutes left here. We have Detroit at the Angels. So I did mention Tyler Anderson. The main thing on him is he's $1 more than the minimum on Yahoo, and he is 6,900 on DraftKings. That is about the best we have to offer on a point per dollar basis. The upside almost non-existent. He just doesn't get strikeouts, which tends to, what did we say, suppress your upside in the DFS world. The other thing to remember is Detroit, even though they scored 10 runs last night, and even though they have scored double digits 3 times this month, they only have 5 times on the season. Only once in the first half. Still not a great offense, but Tyler Anderson, not really a great pitcher. We're hoping, we can't even say we're hoping for a quality start. We're hoping for 5 cleanish innings and 4 or so strikeouts. That's not overly exciting, but at $26 on Yahoo, he is worth mentioning. Talk about the offenses. Any thoughts on the pitching here, really, other than that price play? I don't think there are any.
No. I mean, you like Anderson more than I do. Our tools.
I wrap that in so many caveats.
I don't get it, though. It's not just you.
True. I like him more than you, but I barely like him.
But it's not just you. I didn't even mean to say you. The ownership is what I don't get. Yes. Like, he's 7K. He's getting like the 4th most ownership on the slate. I don't like, he's a price play in that he's 6,900. Grayson Rodriguez is less than 1,000 more. I mean, listen, you don't have a ton of options down there, so it's a good matchup against Detroit. I'd much rather get to the Detroit side. This is one where I could see the ownership like flattening a lot and becoming like 10 to 15%, and all the guys like Rodriguez and the top 3 guys all getting a little bit more. Do you agree?
Yes, completely. And
I don't think it's the worst play in the world, though, just because of what you said. Price play. You're certainly not scared of Detroit. Even though I have interest in some of the Detroit bats, that's because Anderson's getting love. They're cheap and they have some power upside, but they're not necessarily good.
And that good is always such a relative term.
Right.
Let me see. I think I pulled some 30-day numbers here, if I can find them quickly. Detroit is averaging 4.2 runs per game over the last 30 days. That's right. It's a little bit below league average. Anderson over the last 2 years is a 19.2% strikeout rate, except, that's why. The Detroit lineup is the one I want to talk about. They have just a 17% strikeout rate over the last 2 years. When you go look at their lineup, they don't have that many, oh my God, they're striking out Joey Gallo, Rowdy Tellez style hitters. So it's one of those where there's not a, hey, if Anderson got these 3 guys, got 2 of them twice and 1 of them once, all of a sudden he has 5 strikeouts. Those guys don't exist in this lineup for the most part. So someone like Anderson is going to be hard pressed to get strikeouts. It's baseball. Congratulations on a double-digit strikeout game tonight, Tyler Anderson, in advance. But that's my one fear on there. If you were going to go with these guys, I mean, obviously Torkelson. Sterling's not too bad. I mean, he should be leading off. Miggy, one last hurrah. Maybe.
I mean, against the lefty, sure. I'd probably play Miggy before I played Anderson.
I want to look up all-time Grand Slam leaders. So you got to be careful when you put this because it brings, if you don't put in baseball, there are other Grand Slams, even though they're stealing baseball's name. How many home runs do you think, Grand Slams, do you think Miguel Cabrera has?
It's such a random thing. I know, what's he got, like 5, 25?
Oh, he's got 6.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
6.
He's got 620. Oh, wait, no. He's got 6 Grand Slams.
6 Grand Slams. One
How many
more
does he have in his career? He's got like 530, right?
Yeah, he's up over 500.
I know he's over 5. I thought you were
he's
saying
at
he was
510. He has 510.
Okay.
So do you think Royce Lewis will get one more grand slam if he hits another 480 home runs like me? Grand slams are so fickle. This is just we're into the land of the absurd. Let's finish this one up. Last game of the night, Dodgers at Mariners. Mariners, boy, they're battling Texas and Toronto to see who tries not to F up this last spot for the wild card game or for the wild card berth. You have the Dodgers in town. They're going against Bryce Miller. My notes against Bryce Miller say 1, susceptible to lefty power, 2, career high in innings. He has, I think, 137 innings this year between the majors and the minors. Well, I think career he has like 250 innings. So he's got more than half he barely played his first year, right? But he has more than half of his career innings already this year. Even over his last, I'm going from memory now, even over his last 6 games, I think he has allowed 1 home run. The underlying issue of lefty powers is a challenge. His strikeouts have fallen off. Like, we think he's hitting the wall. The Mariners have tried to manage their workload because they know they're going to need him down the stretch, at least making starts here. If I side with anything, this is very specific. I would like Freeman and Muncy as a duo, or I would take 2, maybe even all 3 of Peralta, Hayward, and Outman, because they should be in adjacent spots in the order. That's the only thing I really want from this game. On the other side, you got Clayton Kershaw. Anything you want to call out on Kershaw or anything else I haven't covered that you are fond of in this game?
So 2 things. 1, Kershaw is interesting. We haven't mentioned his name one time the entire show. Kind of forgot he was even on the slate. He's going to get less ownership than those other guys up top. Tough matchup. He's battled injuries this year, so it's tough to feel as comfortable with him, like having a full workload, etc. But based on ownership and just like his ceiling, I think that he is intriguing in tournaments. And then I want to go back for a minute, just say something that I forgot to say. We didn't talk about Colorado at all.
Okay. Yeah.
San Fran game. I don't love them here, but they are on the other side of Coors. What's interesting with Colorado and what made me think of them now with Seattle, both those teams, they're the only teams with under a 1% chance of being a top value stack. Like Colorado and Seattle, tough to justify getting to either of those. Seattle obviously in the really tough matchup, but Colorado, like, they are way more expensive than San Francisco, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
All righty. Any home run calls? And then we will hand this over to Matt Kajeski and Ben Rasa. They will be on a new, fresh stream, but still on the Stochastic YouTube channel, talking college football live before long.
Yeah, I got a home run call in my bag. Rowdy Tellez.
Just kidding.
No, I wouldn't do you like that.
I'm expecting the tweet when he hits one, though.
For sure.
Yeah, so I said something bad about, it was TJ Hawkinson. I was like, do you know in his career he only has two touchdown games and like 3 games of more than 90 yards? I said in like a third of his games he has 6 or more receptions, right? So for PPR he does okay, but he doesn't really get a lot of yards. And yeah, boy howdy, did he have himself a game on Thursday. Someone wrote me and was like, yeah, that one came back to bite you, didn't it? It's like we speak these things into existence.
For sure. So. You know that. You've been doing this long enough. Give me Spencer Torkelson.
Okay. I'm going to go with Kyle Schwarber. Why not? Lefty, righty matchup. Michaelis doesn't give up a ton of power, but he doesn't shut it down by any stretch. Let's rephrase that. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs. He gives up some power, but hey, Kyle Schwarber, man, his power plays in any park at all. The one thing I forgot, speaking of NFL, we do have the NFL lineup generator now. It's a standalone package, $14.95 per week. It also enables you to get the lineup generator for all 3 primetime showdown slates. So all 3 primetime showdown slates: Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, and Sunday Night Football. The base package allows you to build up 500 lineups to create 500 lineups. When you use it, you can choose 20 of those. and export them. You can export more than 20, but it caps you at 500 lineups. Don't worry, you're going to be unique. You're not going to get a ton of overlap with other people using this tool. In these giant contests, you're just going to get overlap anyway, but for Showdown anyways. But that's 500 lineups. The larger package allows you to basically roll with 10,000 lineups, and you get to export them out 20 at a time. But there you go. So check that out. Notice there's no promo code. That was for week 1. I told you guys it was going to go away. Can't wait till I get hey, what's the promo code again? Hey, it expired. Sorry, you got to act on this stuff fast. We don't we don't inflate price stuff here. So when we're giving you the discounts, it's a good deal. We could go the Kohl's cash model and goose everything up by 30%, and it's always on sale. Plus, we're giving you Kohl's cash, or we could just give you the honest pricing and give you a deal every now and then, right? Which would you rather have? Be straight with us. Be straight with us. We're going to be straight with you. But again, we're going to hand this over to Matt and Ben. You can follow this Matt Belman, on Twitter or X at Fantasy Tips Matt. Ooh, following Matt on X. That's an interesting phrase. With fantasy, just the tips, Matt. Not so sure. It is a family-friendly show. I'm in trouble now. I am at EMac DFS, and of course, it is stochastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.